What's up, hobby friends? My name is Casey and welcome to another miniature rescue. This week, I finally finished this Deathguard army that I started more than 4 years ago. The new Deathguard book is here, and with it, some pretty nice updates and minis. But I've been sitting on a Deathguard army of my own since 2021, that I've been meaning to fix up for a very long time. I started the army as a kind of new dad project that I could work on during my newborn's first few months. Started filming a vlog-style series that I called the Baby Diaries, where I basically only worked on that army while my daughter was sleeping. Turns out, babies are hard. And while I did get a kind of insane amount of work done in those first few months, it ended up going to the wayside to make room for easier projects, which kind of makes sense. The army has been sitting, just waiting for a chance at some life on the table. With the new Deathguard book out and some opportunities to actually play some games, it's finally time to take all of those models out and put together a playable 2,000 point army. Of course, there is still a ton of work to do in order to get most of these back on the table. Most of these minis are barely even started, and some of them need to be stripped entirely and reworked from the ground up. So let's lay everything out and get an idea of what needs to happen. Quite a lot of these were started with a brown base coat with a chipping medium in between a white overcoat. Some were painted all the way back when 8th edition came out, and they look fine enough to put in an army. They're at least painted. Others are in much worse condition. I picked up a used Typhus at some point, I honestly don't really remember where, and he's got a whole bunch of paint that needs to just come off. He's going to be my main HQ for the list that I have. Speaking of which, I put together a list from models that I had and ended up with a relatively small model count, 2,000 point army. I don't play this game nearly often enough to know if this is actually going to work, but this is supposed to be an army that I can play right now. That is the goal. Making an actually good list can come after I get more models painted and see what works and what doesn't. That also means that there are quite a few models that I do have painted that are actually being left out. Some extra poxwalkers, a defiler, tank, stuff like that. I want to aim for the infantry models getting painted up, so there are at least options and the basics are taken care of. So first things first, let's get some of these into the sonic cleaner and get the paint off, and get everything cleaned and ready to start adding some paint. I'm also going to walk through the process for the armor, so we're all caught up on a couple of the models that haven't really been started yet. But before that, let me tell you about today's excellent sponsor. Learning new things is tough. We're miniature painters, we get it. Every time we pick up a brush, we're figuring something out. Lately, I've been learning back-end development through BOOT.DEV, and honestly, it's been going way better than I expected, because they gamify the experience. That is the trick. If you're not bored, you're more likely to keep going and actually reach your goals, just like with miniature painting. When it's fun, it's gonna stick. BOOT.DEV offers a bunch of courses, Python, JavaScript, Linux, and many more. The lessons feel more like a game than a textbook. You earn XP, level up, unlock achievements, and complete quests as you climb the global leaderboard. It actually feels like something that I want to do in my free time. And the best part, I'm walking away with skills that I can use in the real world. I took their Python course and had a genuinely good time with it. The interface is clean, the prompts are engaging, and I was learning something useful that I could actually apply outside of the course. And yeah, it's fun, but you're still doing the real work, writing tons of code and building actual projects, just like you would on the job. And speaking of jobs, do you know that back-end developers earn over $100,000 a year on average? So if you're looking for a career pivot or just want to fund that next big miniature purchase, it's definitely worth checking out. Now you can try BOOT.DEV's courses for free, and if you like it, use my code eBay Miniature Rescues to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan, which is a pretty good deal if you ask me. Big thanks to BOOT.DEV for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to that army. I'll start the prepping and cleaning by getting the minis that are pretty much ready for paint onto holders. That way we can swap them out and assembly line them in order to finish them in a somewhat timely manner. Then I can get out the sonic cleaner and get old Typhus into his bath. Okay, so small issue with that. I normally use a little jar of isopropyl, but this mini's a little too big for that jar. So I cleaned out a coffee mug and filled it up with isopropyl. he pretty much fits right in, and the cup sits nicely in the water bath in the Sonic Cleaner. It'll also probably clean this cup pretty well, so kind of a nice bonus. Immediately, when the Sonic Cleaner turns on, you can see that paint starting to come away from the model. Pretty cool. After about 10 minutes, I can check on the Sonic Cleaner and do a quick scrub of the model. Quite a bit of that paint has been removed, but it was pretty thick, so he's going to need a little more time. Back into the mix for another run and back to painting. After another run and scrub, he's down to a very thin layer of primer. Nothing that's going to be an issue when we reprime and paint over him, so he's pretty much there. The only other problem is his head. The horn on his helmet is broken, and there is some damage to it. Luckily, I have the exact same Cromlech head in a drawer, and I can just replace it. Come to think of it, I think I might have put this head on a long time ago. I don't know, a little squishing and prying, and the head pops right out. Now I can grab the new one, snip it off the sprue, and get it glued into the same spot. Good as new, and now I can also get some primer on him so we can see him the way he's supposed to be. That also means that we're ready to start painting some minis. Okay, so Typhus has primer and a few other models as well, so it's time to get those caught up with the rest of the army. A layer of brown goes down on top of the black, covering the armor panels. That will end up getting that chipping damage. Even if something will be a different color or metallic, make sure to cover all of the armor, because you never know what you're going to end up chipping and actually liking. Now, once that brown has dried, it's time to get out that good old BOOT.DEV Extra Hold hairspray. I don't actually think that the extra hold part is doing any good here, but the hairspray part is definitely what we are looking for. A nice spritz over the model to get a fairly uniform coat is what we're after. But with hairspray, you end up getting some different sized blobs that lead to slightly bigger chips in some areas and smaller in the others. Not a huge thing, not a huge problem, but if you want more control over chipping later on, then picking up some Vallejo chipping medium would be the way to go. This is the inexpensive version that still works very well. These models are now at the salon, so I get out my hairdryer and quickly get them looking their best. When the hairspray has dried, we can now paint over the top with our main armor color. I'm going to coat these with white, trying to cover pretty much everything except the absolute deepest recesses, so that we can keep some shadow. This will end up being the way that the armor pretty much looks, so getting a nice coat is important. Otherwise, we can chip away at stuff after and then throw filters all over the place to get the coloring that we actually want. After everything is nice and dry once again, and those minis are put onto their own handles, I get the wet palette ready to go for some painting. One of the reasons that I really like this army, and in particular this paint scheme, is that you can really get a good experience from each model. Volumes are slightly different, the chipping is unique on every model, and there are plenty of opportunities to try things and throw colors into the mix. Before getting any paint on, I need to chip that armor. I'm using a smaller, kind of stiff dry brush to do this, which makes it a little easier to control when the bristles are pretty short. Apply a little bit of water on the pieces that you're working on. In this case, I'm going to go with that stomach armor. And after the water sits for a second and reactivates that hairspray, I can pretty lightly start to scrub that surface, much like actual dry brushing. It's going to pick up raised details and start to take away that paint. If you want more chipping, you press a little harder and work that area for longer. For the most part, I'm looking to get small chips across the armor and a little heavier on the underside of the stomach. The point is, you can go for as much or as little as you want, but for me, pretty hard across everything to bring out that rusty brown color. After these minis get the chipping treatment, we can start to lay down the actual color. I'm changing it up a little bit from my original scheme, only because after doing a handful back then, and having literal years to look at it, I think they need a little bit of extra color. I'll start with algae green speed paint for the shoulders, some mahogany brown for the cloth, a darker pink for the nasty bits on each model, ivory for all of the bones across the models, and a dark silver for all the metallics. The algae green is the newest addition and brings that Deathguard color scheme together. And it's not too much either, just one shoulder on some, both on the others, but not a lot of space really. It looks good, and I think after a few years of thinking about it, I'm pretty happy to commit to this decision. It's only been 4 years. After all those base coats go down, we can start to change the color of the armor and start to make it look a little more purposeful. Using a brown enamel, I liberally coat the entire model. We can remove quite a bit of it and start to make that white armor a little bit better. After getting each model to a place that I like, just removing a lot of that enamel, I'll come back in with some ivory to lighten up pieces of the armor. This is where things get really fun. You can go with a little bit of edge highlighting or a whole bunch of layering up. There is a ton of variety in each model, and the chipping points you in certain directions, so you kind of know how much or little to paint and where. The same thing with the green on the shoulders. I like to use some toxic waste green from scale 75 and a little bit of ivory to bring that green out a little more and do some edge highlighting. In order to bring out the metallics quite a bit, I'm going to use a bright silver to do scratchy edge highlights and some light dry brushing over those metallic parts. This will get all of those edges defined and bring out a ton of detail on the models that was lost to the darker metal and brown enamel. Kind of also looks like rust, which is a bonus. For a lot of the other little things like the fleshy bits, I just use the original base color and mix in more of that ivory. The base color being layered over the grime brings back the color, and the ivory mix lets you put in some extra texture, just helping bring out a little detail across all of those pieces. The point is, it's little touch-ups and adding texture to each piece, however much or little you want, makes each Deathguard model fun to paint. Across the entire line, every model I have ever painted has been a good time. There's freedom in being able to just push paint around and have a finished playable model on the other side. Adding a little verdigris or rust into the mix, and you get to play around even more with color, adding little bits to each model and turning each dent and ding on the armor into some kind of little story. Some weird hole that oozes a nasty verdigris or rusted wetness behind a crack in the armor that might be some kind of thing trying to push its way out. There's just so much variety in each model, and I'm glad that I finally made my way back to them. They really are great. After everything gets paint, I can do the bases that didn't get done before the primer. I got a lot of these models at different times, and some of them I did the basing before getting started, and some, I don't know why, I really never did at all. Maybe I was too impatient to just get paint on. Either way, it's been too long, but fortunately, it's not the worst thing in the world to take care of. A little thinned down PVA spread out with an old brush and a quick dip into the bucket of beach sand, and that will get that initial basing layer taken care of. Once the glue dries, I can come in with some Agrax Earthshade, the newer contrasty type wash, not the good, older, watery one. Not going to waste it, and I'm going to coat all those rocks. The shade brings a uniform color to a lot of the smallest bits in the sand while leaving the little rocks alone. So there's a variety of color in the dirt. It's not the best basing, but it works pretty well for what it is. It's also very quick. I also don't want to forget those little smoky bits on Typhus and a few of those other models. It's a pretty important part. So let's get out the silly putty and mask off a few things. I also used an old glove to cover one model, and a business card for another. So whatever you have to mask will pretty much work. I start by bringing back that original white on any of the glowy smoky bits, and then cover that with some Aethermatic blue contrast paint. Then, from the front and above, some fluorescent pink, which has become the spot color for the rest of the models in the army. A lot of the eyes are done with that. This covers the blue and creates a nice bit of pink and teal, which is a great color combination. And once that's done, I can remove the models from their holders and call this part of the army done. 2,000 points is tough, and this army has taken me more than 4 years to finish. At the same time, it's probably an army that I like more than quite a few that I've painted over that same amount of time. So it seems like an alright trade. Armies are just tough in general, and life can get in the way, but eventually you will finish that project, so don't give up hope just yet. I'm sure that you're going to see these models on the table soon enough. As far as this army, this 2,000 points may be done, but I also feel like I've barely made a dent in what I've actually meant to do. I guess another few years and we'll probably get there. Until then, thank you for joining me on another miniature rescue. If you like something about this video, please consider hitting that like button, sharing this video with your hobby friends, and subscribing for more miniature rescues. And once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. And of course, here is my basically completed 2,000 point Deathguard army. Thanks again for watching.